Hello, and welcome back to another Pen Talk. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for exploring the wide world of pens with me. These are three pens which share a little bit in common. The main thing is they were all bought on AliExpress. They were all relatively inexpensive. These two were identified as Jinhao 75s with titanium nibs. Must take that titanium with a grain of salt. And this was just a generic pen. So all three of these are all metal pens. They have very similar components. The caps, barrels, sections are all interchangeable between these two Jinhao 75s. Here's what the listings look like on AliExpress. One of my viewers mentioned Jinhao 601 and 601A, and when I looked them up, I found them to be very similar to the 75. In fact, I don't know if they're the same pen or not, or what the differences are. These two 75s are not labeled. They just have Jinhao on this red band at the bottom of the cap. So it's hard to tell. I'm not in the mood to order a 601 or a 601A. I think it's terrible that they're using the same numbering system as Wing Sung has used for a completely different designed pen. I do really like the look of both of these pens, and the third one also. This red material is kind of like that deep metallic red, and it has these nice striated lines in it. This check pattern is done very well, and this is just your classic black pen with some red accents. So we're going to explore these pens in a little bit more detail, give you some dimensions and specs on the pens, and we're going to ink them up and see how those number 5 fine nibs write. And if they don't write well, they can be replaced. On this pen, the nib and feed do pull out, which is nice. But I kind of like this nib in the pen. Just a standard number 5 fine Jinhao nib. But it has a nice darker coating on it. Time will tell if it holds up. You just have a standard injection molded feed, which is in billions of pens. A standard converter, which works very well. I like this little red threads on the top of the section. I think aesthetically, I think the pen is really nice looking, even in pieces. Here's the other Jinhao 75. Disassembles, has that same red threading on the section, red band on the bottom of the cap. Same black nib that they're saying is titanium, but I'm definitely considering it titanium colored. And the classic injection molded feed, and a branded Jinhao converter with no insert, but these seem to work pretty well and hold up pretty well, so I'm fine with that. All in all, an attractive pen. Here's a red pen, which also I was able to pull out the nib and feed. And what I notice about the nib is it is branded with Yiren. And I may be pronouncing it wrong, but it just makes me smile when I do pronounce it that way. And the classic 22 karat GP for gold plate. It's actually a two-tone nib. I have a ton of number 5 nibs. So if I don't like the way this one writes, I can put a medium one in, or depending upon how much I like the pen, go a little bit upscale. This is a non-branded converter, but it certainly looks like the classic Jinhao converter. I like the fact that it has that little insert. It's a little bit softer. It fits very well into the section. The section is your classic metal section, which is used on a lot of pens. It feels good in the hand. Those chasing marks on there give you a little bit of texture, which, makes it easy to grip. Diameter could be bigger, but it's not a big pen, so I think it's in keeping with the pen. It's all metal. Little plastic insert in there is a insert into the barrel. I think it's extremely well made for the price. And we will see how it writes a little bit later. Metal caps on the two Jinhao 75s are pretty much the same, except from a design viewpoint. As we look inside, we'll see both of them have a plastic liner which has those threads in it. I'm okay with plastic and metal threads because I think they work well as long as those threads match up well. And inside there we just see a metal tube that makes up the barrel. We're going to do some LED investigation. And these are two sections which are from two different pens. But if we look inside, we'll see glue being used to hold that nib assembly in place. So it doesn't unscrew, but thankfully I can pull out the nib and feed, which is good. We're going to look at these three caps, two from the Jinhao 75. And the 75 both have a nice plastic liner in there, and then a brass holds in the finial and the clip. So hopefully it's airtight, and that brass is not going to rust. The Yiren pen also has a complete plastic liner in there with looks like a little bit of glue to hold everything together, the finial and the clip. So again, similar designs. I mean, they're metal pens, and there's going to be a lot of similarity in how they're made, and who knows if they could be made in the same factory. So to me, the obvious pen to compare the Jinhao 75 with is the Bauer 388, which also is reminiscent of the Parker Sonnet. When I reviewed these, I did the Parker Sonnet, so I'm not going to do that again. And I want to look at these pens for what they are, not necessarily for the design that they may emulate. Overall, they're all about the same weight. They're about the same length. I just feel that the Jinhaos have a little bit more substantial feel to them. They feel better made. Parts fit together a little bit well. They snap shut better. I'm not a fan of this gold trim. It's kind of a little bit too shiny. I guess I kind of like the matte, and even though it has a shiny black clip, it's not as overpowering in the design of the pen as it is. And I like the red band. I know that red band was on Moonman M2, and some people didn't like it, but I happen to enjoy red. I enjoy all the colors, but red is one I really enjoy a lot. So that's the comparison. They both have a similar designed cap with a plug, but of course on the Jinhaos, the cap and the plug are both black. In the bottom of the barrel, it's also a similar design. These are formed from a piece of metal plate which is spun and drawn into this shape. A very common metal forming technique that's been brought over to use in making pens. The similarities in the pen carry over into their posted versions. They all post fairly deeply, fairly well, and they're balanced when you're writing posted or unposted. They work both ways. And the sections are very similar, but obviously the nibs are a little different. These all have sections I would call on the small side. Again, the gold elements are more predominant in the Bauer. They're all the same size nib, similar to a number 5 nib. There is a metal band here, or a simulated metal band at the end of the Jinhaos. It's just that it's black, so it blends in a little bit better. And that little red accent here between the section and the barrel versus here, it's a classic gold section. I also enjoy the writing of the Jinhao fine nibs more than I enjoyed writing with the Bauer nibs. It's just a matter of personal preference. You may like the Bauer over the Jinhao. So I talked a little about fit and finish and how they feel in the hand. Here's the Bauer uncap. And here's the capping. Here's the Jinhao. It just has a better sound to it. And I'm being extremely picky, but sometimes I can be. It's kind of like when you slam that door in the car and it has a nice thud to it, or it just feels like you're breaking the door. Similar to these pens. I'm going to use the same ink in all three pens. And that bottle obviously is not one for filling from, but I have used this great glass bottle that came with the 492 pen. This is just a classic blue-black that is really on the blue side of blue-black. So we'll see how it works in the three pens. We'll be able to get to see how they write with the same ink in them. So before we do the writing sample, I thought it would be good just to explore why I have these pens. So I would say the primary reason is I saw them and the price was low and they looked interesting, and I felt that viewers might find them interesting also. Some people like a metal pen, some people like a smaller size pen, and if they were looking at these pens that would fit that category, the fact that they're metal really doesn't detract, in my viewpoint, from the writing experience of the pen. It has a good weight to it. You know, they're on that mid 20 to high 20 gram for the pen. They all post well. What I'd like to ask you is, do you have a Jinhao 75 and a 601 or 601A? And if you could let me know what you see as the difference between those models, I would be very appreciative. I can only look at what's on eBay and what's selling, and the dimensions and the weights and everything else really don't give me enough information to make a decision on it. Is the 601 an upgrade to the 75? Is the 75 a new model replacing the 601? Oh, hard to tell. The 601 comes in a great variety. Here's some examples. Just like the 75 comes in a great variety. They also, both of them have some red trim on some of the models. Both of them have, black clips, so I can't tell. So enough of this describing model of pen and similarities and things of that nature. Let's put nib to paper. All these pens are very similar in their dimensions. They fit fine in the hand without posting. That section's on the small side, about 9 millimeters at its thinnest section. It goes up to a little bit over 10. You don't feel that step up. You do feel that flare out at the end, which is good, because with a small nib, it tells you where you're getting, I think, too close to the paper. They all post deeply and securely and really don't change the balance. We gave you the weights earlier. We'll give you the dimensions when we did that comparison. That's the summation. It's a decent writing pen. That's the one thing to learn from this. So all of these three pens write very similar. They're all pretty smooth with a little feedback. I think it's just a perfect combination. They write at any angle. They write with little pressure. And they're all fairly wet, with the Yiren being the driest of the three. But this is also the smoothest nib of the three. And finger smear is not the most scientific method of evaluating these pens. So this is going to be a little bit different, because I'm going to rate all three pens together, and we're going to give them an 8.4. They get one check for the nib. They get a half a check for the look, the design, and a half a check for the build. I mean, these are inexpensive pens, and they pretty much have those inexpensive pen qualities to them. And the one thing that makes them different to me is the fact that they write well. They feel good in the hand, all three of these pens. They could each easily become everyday carries for somebody, you know, to pop off cap. I haven't had any nib drying out issues, but I've only had them for a couple days. So generally, if I'm going to get an issue, I'll know it pretty early. So when you leave them set overnight and you take the cap off and you first touch nib the paper and it doesn't write, that's a good sign. And maybe it'll write after, you know, a little bit of prodding, but it's a good sign that it's drying out pretty quickly. And this Pilot Blue Black ink is just a really good flowing, fairly saturated ink that's worked well in every pen I've ever put it in. It does have a little bit of shading, but that's not what I would use it for. It also has a little bit of permanence, which is also nice. So hopefully you've enjoyed this look at three pens that are definitely lookers, and definitely pens that I know there's a market for out there, because I'm certain there's millions of these sold. So thank you for watching. May you find a pen that you think is a good value, a pen that encourages you to write often, and write in various forms, or draw or doodle, or scribble, whatever you like to do to put ink on paper. So be safe, be healthy, and be happy. We've reached the end of this video, and we're going to say bye. And this just writes well. I mean, these are just really good writers. Thanks for watching.